Chapter 1551, Lang Xuanzhu. This person came to the Blood Demon Church more than 200 years ago. Moreover, she brought along a servant. For the past years, they have been living in the ancient Demon Mountain. Elder Shuiyang continued speaking. Ever since she came, the church master gave an order not to go near the ancient Demon Mountain. For the past 200 years, we never saw this person coming out again, although we knew that such a person did exist. Naturally, I have never seen her before. However, I can confirm she is a young woman, and our church master addresses her as Lang Xuanzhu. Lang Xuanzhu? Jian Wushuang's eyes shrank. It's definitely her. Draw me the location of the ancient Demon Mountain, Jian Wushuang ordered. Understood. Elder Shuiyang agreed without hesitation. After Jian Wushuang had obtained what he wanted. Looking at the fact that you are cooperative, I can let you die an easier death. Jian Wushuang shot a glance toward Elder Shuiyang. What? Elder Shuiyang was shocked. When he was about to say something, a soul power headed for him straight away. After that, before he was even able to give a horrible shriek, he became an icy-cold body. With a wave of the fiery king's hand, a great amount of flames appeared and burnt Elder Shuiyang's body to ashes. Jian Wushuang, Lang Xuanzhu is the person you're looking for, right? The fiery king asked. That's right. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. However, she is currently staying in the Blood Demon Church. Hence, it is next to impossible for her to come out by herself. There's no choice. We can only storm in. Charge in forcefully? The fiery king frowned slightly. The Blood Demon Church has a total of 4 real gods, and among them, there is also an eternal real god. Hence, it is not a good idea to provoke them. I understand. However, the Blood Demon Church is very weak in comparison to the lineage of Star. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold, and he immediately sent a message to Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang, I have already hired 3 real gods for you, and they will arrive at the Blood Demon Church in a short while. At that time, they will contact you. With the 3 real gods and fiery king who is with you, you can suppress the Blood Demon Church easily, Hall Master Yuan answered with great confidence. Thank you. I'm sorry to have troubled you. Jian Wushuang thanked Hall Master Yuan. After that, he waited quietly near the base of the Blood Demon Church with the fiery king. At the ancient Demon Mountain within the base of the Blood Demon Church. At the summit of the ancient Demon Mountain, there was a delicate black hall, and there was a white-clothed woman sitting inside it. The white-clothed woman's face was covered with a veil, and her looks could not be clearly seen. However, just her partially revealed face was enough to excite countless cultivators. The most important thing was that she was extremely cold and elegant. Such coldness and elegance was enough to captivate the souls of the people. She was Lang Xuanzhu, who Elder Shuiyang mentioned. At the very moment, behind Lang Xuanzhu, there was a black-robed person standing respectfully, and she was completely covered by the black robe. Number 7. Please ask the Blood Demon Church Master about the progress of that matter. Lang Xuanzhu asked coldly. Master, please don't worry. Not long ago, the Blood Demon Church Master sent me a message. In 10 years' time, he will be able to complete what we asked of him. A hoarse, low voice could be heard from under the black robe of the black-robed person. From the sound of it, the black-robed person seemed to be an old married woman. He still needs 10 more years? His speed is really slow. I think he can stop being the Blood Demon Church Master. Lang Xuanzhu remained indifferent. It seemed that in her eyes, the Blood Demon Church Master who had achieved the level of eternal real god was about the same as an ant. Master, with just a request from you, many people would be willing to allow you to take over the Blood Demon Church in place of him. The old married woman under the black robe laughed. Oh right. His Highness Mu Hong should be reaching in a few days' time, right? His Highness Mu Hong? Ha ha. He is really persistent. Did he come to earn my favor again? Lang Xuanzhu laughed coldly. His Highness Mu Hong knows that the master needs the 7-star moon warbler lotus. Hence, he used his father, the 7th Palace Master's power, and almost destroyed a holy kingdom. With that, he finally obtained the 7-star moon warbler lotus, and this time round, he is coming over intentionally to give it to you, the black-robed old married woman said. Oh, looks like the 7th Palace Master really treats him like a treasure on his skin. However, it's also because of this that Mu Hong was able to live until now. If not, with his attitude, he would have been killed by people many times a long time ago. Since he wishes to earn my favor, so be it. Lang Zuanju sneered and her eyes glowed with a cold light. After a few days, somewhere near the Blood Demon Church, the three real gods who Hall Master Yuan had hired to help Jian Wushuang arrived. Atop the vast void, three figures flew side by side. Among the three of them, the leader was a big and tall man who wore a bronze armor. As for the other two, one of them was a red-robed old married woman, while the other one was a slightly hunchbacked, bald old man. As for Jian Wushuang, he felt an extremely huge amount of pressure from the three of them. Gosh! Two eternal real gods, and the last one is actually a chaotic real god. The Fiery King revealed a shocked expression. In the 3 stages of real god, he was only at the top of the first stage. However, among the 3 people in front of him, 2 of them were at the second stage while the last person was at the third stage of a real god. With such a lineup, even if they were to be placed in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, it would be enough to destroy some medium-sized powerhouses that were weak in power. You are Jian Wushuang? The 3 real gods looked toward Jian Wushuang. Although Jian Wushuang was only a universe god, he was a super demon who ranked 3rd in the universe god ranking list. Moreover, he was also a Star Palace disciple of the lineage of Star. When looking at such a genius, the 3 real gods remained modest. I am Long Qing and you can call me Real God Long Qing. As for the 2 of them, they are Real God Bai Ying and Real God Yin Tuo respectively. Among the 3 of them, the big, tall, bronze-armored man, who was also the strongest as a chaotic real god, opened his mouth to make his introduction. I am Jian Wushuang. Greetings to the 3 of you. Jian Wushuang greeted the 3 of them modestly. Hall Master Yuan has told us the objective of this trip. However, as for the details for this operation, you will be the one to call the shots, Real God Long Qing said. As Hall Master Yuan had given them great benefits, they had come to give Jian Wushuang a hand. For a short period of time, they would take instructions from Jian Wushuang. Since the 3 of you already know the objective, I need not say much. However, I must stress that the person I want must be captured alive. If there is really no choice, you can injure her. However, you cannot kill her. I would rather let her escape than let her die. Jian Wushuang said earnestly. The 3 real gods looked at each other in blank dismay and nodded their heads. They could also tell that the person Jian Wushuang wanted to capture alive had a special relationship with him. Also, I have obtained reliable news that Lang Zuanju, who I wanted to capture alive, is currently within the ancient demon mountain of the Blood Demon Church. Moreover, she has not left the ancient demon mountain for over 200 years. Hence, we have no choice but to charge in forcefully. Chapter 1552. Barge and I had some dealings with Blood Demon Church before. Although there are 4 real gods, besides Blood Demon Church Master who reached the 2nd stage, the other 3 are just 1st stage void real gods. With our lineup, we can easily suppress Blood Demon Church, a bald elderly with a hunchback, Real God Yin Tuo, said. Even so, let's not let our guards down. Jian Wushuang glanced at everyone around him. When we launch attack later, Real God Bai Ying, Real God Yin Tuo and Brother Fiery King, the 3 of you tear the protective array apart and barge into Blood Demon Church for a massacre. The bigger the movement, the better. Real God Long Qing and I will seize the time when Blood Demon Church is in chaos to head over to Ancient Demon Mountain to capture Lord Lang alive. We retreat once we have caught her. Okay. Real God Long Qing nodded. You get the final say. Real God Bai Ying and Real God Yin Tuo showed respect to Jian Wushuang too. Only Fiery King creased his eyebrows. Jian Wushuang, you want to head to Ancient Demon Mountain personally? He remembered Hall Master Yuan had exhorted for Jian Wushuang not to reveal himself. I am responsible for Lord Lang. If I don't go personally, I can't be at ease, Jian Wushuang replied. If so, all right then. But, please be extremely careful, Fiery King said. Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. Very soon, the 5 of them arrived before the lair of Blood Demon Church. The 3 of you have to take action first, Jian Wushuang said. VAR Axid 6327 document, element by XI 6327, SSP 6327-math, floor date now. Windowed at pubic stag, windowed pubic stag, don't worry about it. Real God Bai Ying, Real God Yin Tuo and Fiery King immediately moved forward. Jian Wushuang and Real God Long Qing hid behind. Very quickly. Hong! The terrifying roar was heard from the void in the front, and boundless crimson god burst out. It tore an opening in the protective array of Blood Demon Church. In the lair of Blood Demon Church, it instantly stirred a commotion. Who is it? A roar reverberated in the universe along with angry voices. Ha ha, giblets of Blood Demon Church, you exterminated the Fiery family 3 million years ago, and I, Fiery King, have come back to take revenge. A laugh with tremendous momentum and a tinge of madness rang across the universe like thunder. Jian Wushuang could recognize Fiery King's voice the moment he heard it. As for whatever Fiery King had said about 3 million years, it was merely a random excuse that he had made up. There were countless powers and tribes that Blood Demon Church had exterminated in Blood Demon World. They reckoned they themselves didn't know if they had exterminated the Fiery family. Naturally, they thought Fiery King was simply there to take revenge. Hong! In Blood Demon Church, real God Bai Ying, real God Yin Tuor and Fiery King spread their ferocious aura. Especially real God Bai Ying and real God Yin Tuor, as they were two eternal real gods. 3 experts barging in, and the experts in Blood Demon Church felt as though it was the end of the world. The team immediately exploded, and all the real gods launched attacks wantonly. The universe gods had no room to interfere. Blood Demon Church was naturally in utter confusion and chaos. That very moment, Jian Wushuang, who was waiting near the lair of Blood Demon Church, squinted his eyes. Real God Long Qing, let's move, Jian Wushuang said. Let me reign in my aura. The few real gods in Blood Demon Church were flustered at the sudden attack by real God Bai Ying and the others. I think they won't have the time to probe carefully, so they shouldn't be able to notice me, real God Long Qing said. That's great. Let's go. Jian Wushuang and Universe God Long Qing immediately turned into flowing light and passed through the opening of Blood Demon Church's protective array to enter into Blood Demon Church. Then, Jian Wushuang took out the route map that Elder Shuiyang had drawn earlier, and he plunged in the direction where Ancient Demon Mountain was located. Although they had met many cultivators of Blood Demon Church on the way, the universe gods in Blood Demon Church were fleeing in a panic, helter-skelter. They didn't even bother to look at Jian Wushuang and real God Long Qing. Even when they saw them, they would only treat them as people in Blood Demon Church. As for the real gods in Blood Demon Church who were fighting in the void, they were even more unlikely to notice them. Jian Wushuang and real God Long Qing entered the depth of Blood Demon Church without hindrance. Ancient Demon Mountain. It's there. Jian Wushuang lifted his head and looked up at the ancient lofty peak at the end of his field of vision. That peak was Ancient Demon Mountain, also where Lord Lang stayed. Jian Wushuang and real God Long Qing were approaching Ancient Demon Mountain at a terrifying speed. In the Black Palace on Ancient Demon Mountain. Lang, this is the 7-star moon warbler lotus. I've put in a great effort and finally got it. A stony-faced young man in a luxurious purple long robe flashed an enchanting smile while sitting before Lord Lang. He was holding the 7-star moon warbler lotus in his hand. Looking at the 7-star moon warbler lotus, Lord Lang's eyes glistened and smiled. Thank you, Your Highness Mu Hong. Don't mention it, the stony-faced man, His Highness Mu Hong looked at Lord Lang with passion in his eyes. Lang, I'm quite free recently and I'd like to keep you company in Blood Demon Church. I wonder if it's okay, Your Highness Mu Hong, you must be joking. With your background, you can go wherever you like. If you were to want to stay in Blood Demon Church, would there be anyone who would chase you away? Blood Demon Church Master doesn't have the guts to. Lord Lang smiled and replied. Ha ha, so you agree, His Highness Mu Hong immediately beamed with joy. Just then, Hong. A vigorous roar was heard from afar and the few people in the Black Palace were frightened. What happened? His Highness Mu Hong's face changed slightly. It's Blood Demon Church. There were 3 real gods that barged in. They seem to be there to take revenge and they are fighting the Blood Demon Church Master now. A chubby red-haired middle-aged man behind His Highness Mu Hong replied. Is that so? His Highness Mu Hong nodded. Blood Demon Church worked for them and had made so many enemies. When the enemies had no power, they naturally could only hold back. Whenever they grew stronger, they would return to take revenge. It was very normal. His Highness, Blood Demon Church Master sent a message and said that the enemy is too strong. They couldn't stand it any longer. They'd like to ask Your Highness for help, the chubby, middle-aged man said. Humph, I just got here. I have no time to bother with this affair. Tell him to figure it out himself and that he has to take care of it soon. If it were to interrupt Lang and I'd kill him. His Highness Mu Hong sounded cold. Let me tell him now, the chubby middle-aged man was going to reply. Something's wrong, the old lady in a black robe behind Lord Lang said in a hoarse voice. Chapter 1553, Redstone Prison. What's wrong? His Highness Mu Hong and the fat, middle-aged man looked toward the old married woman. Someone has entered the spell that I have placed, the black-robed old married woman said. Oh. His Highness Mu Hong frowned and shot a glance toward the fat middle-aged man who was beside him. Go and take a look. Understood. With a change of his body, the fat, middle-aged man disappeared from the palace. Number 7. You go as well, Lang Zuanju instructed. The black-robed old married man's figure also disappeared from the palace. Jian Wushuang and real god Long Qing had just reached the void around the ancient demon mountain. The moment they arrived, they were caught within a spell. Such a spell was simple. Hence, Jian Wushuang and real god Long Qing broke the spell quickly. However, at that moment, swish, a shadow appeared at the void in front of them. It was the fat middle-aged man. A universe god? The fat middle-aged man first swept his eyes across Jian Wushuang and he revealed a surprised expression. However, after that, he took a look at real god Long Qing and his eyes shrank hastily. Jian Wushuang, looks like there are some mistakes in your information. There are other real gods present within the Blood Demon Church. Moreover, he should be a very powerful eternal real god Long Qing said. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded his head slightly and said immediately, I will leave this eternal real god to you. Haha, leave it to me. Real god Long Qing laughed heartily and a scarlet long spear appeared in his hands. Swoosh! With a flash of his body which looked like teleportation, real god Long Qing appeared beside the fat middle-aged man. The scarlet long spear in his hands then stabbed abruptly. Boom! The void collapsed at once. The whole universe was drawn in by the scarlet spear instantly, and in no time, the whole boundless universe headed toward the fat middle-aged man with great power. Such frightening power changed into an ear-piercing sound explosion. Kill! 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 Although real god Long Qing did not open his mouth, Jian Wushuang and the fat middle-aged man who were near the area seemed to have heard hysterical shouting sounds shouting kill. A chaotic real god? The fat middle-aged man's expression changed greatly and he immediately swung his fat palms. Following his swing, a giant mountain appeared in front of him at once. The mountain was golden in color and it gave off an ancient vibe. The mountain was then used to block the attack of the scarlet long spear. However, at the next moment, the lofty mountain crumbled into pieces instantly. Even the ground, which was connected to it, caved in as if it had completely disappeared. What shocking power! This is a chaotic real god? Jian Wushuang revealed an astonished expression. He had seen real gods fighting before. However, those real gods were merely normal real gods of the first stage. As for chaotic real gods who were at the third stage, he had seen Lei Chao killing a real god before. However, as Lei Chao was very powerful and the real gods who he was killing were too weak, he was not able to tell the difference. However, at the very moment, after seeing real god Long Qing's attack, he understood how frightening a chaotic real god was. He was very certain that it was lucky that the real god who stood in front of real god Long Qing was a very powerful eternal real god. If it were a void real god who was at the first stage, with a stab from real god Long Qing, he would probably be able to kill tens of them. HMPH. With a cold shout, the fat middle-aged man retreated quickly and his expression also became ghostly pale, trying to escape. Real god Long Qing was filled with murderous intent. However, at the moment when real god Long Qing chased the fat middle-aged man, a figure appeared behind Jian Wushuang quietly. Swoosh! A dim light came out of the fingertips of the figure and headed towards Jian Wushuang's neck. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang's body changed and he avoided the dim light easily. He actually dodged it. The black-robed old married woman who became visible was surprised when she saw what had happened. It should be known that she was an eternal real god. Even though she had launched a surprise attack on a universe god abruptly, she had still failed to kill him. Jian Wushuang's Blood Mountain sword had already appeared in his hands and his icy-cold eyes looked toward the black-robed old married woman. Another one. Seems like it's another eternal real god. Jian Wushuang was shocked. It was obvious that there were more hidden experts in the Blood Demon Church than he had expected. Little kid, a universe god like you actually dares to come here? Aren't you very gutsy? The black-robed old married woman laughed with a hoarse voice. After that, she lifted the sleeves of her robe and revealed 10 pitch-black, wizened fingers which were below the sleeves of her robe. At that very moment, the 10 fingers were filled with dim light and in no time, rustle, rustle, rustle. A total of 10 rays of light shot out at the same time. Jian Wushuang gave a cold shout and his body dashed forward fiercely. Swish, a total of 18 shadows appeared at the same time. Jian Wushuang's body was like a ghost which passed through the void hastily. At the same time, he also bypassed the dim lights and in the blink of an eye, he had already appeared in front of the black-robed old married woman. Crimson light. His sword light glowed as if it were crimson lightning and it headed straight for the black-robed old married woman's neck. Compared to back when he was in Wu Bei's cave, the power of the crimson lightning that Jian Wushuang had unleashed at that very moment had risen considerably. In particular, its speed had become about twice as fast. This martial art motion? The black-robed old married woman revealed an astonished expression. After that, the 5 fingers on one of her hands changed into a sharp claw at once and headed toward the crimson lightning. Clang! A sound resembling the sounds of metal clashing could be heard and the black-robed old married woman's body floated backwards. At the same time, she revealed a smile. I see. No wonder his abilities are so impressive. It was obvious that the black-robed old married woman had already figured out Jian Wushuang's identity. However, at that very moment, bam! It was another loud sound. A short distance away, the fat middle-aged man was spitting out many mouthfuls of blood continuously from his mouth. His aura then became weaker in an instant. Such a scene had caused the eyes of the black-robed old married woman to shrink. At the next moment, boom, imposing divine power which could blot out the sky burst forth from her body and headed toward the universe. The divine power came together at the void and transformed into red giant stones. The giant stones then stacked onto and pressed against each other, forming a giant prison that was completely made up of red giant stones. Moreover, the prison had many red walls and in a split second, the red walls isolated Jian Wushuang and real god Long Qing completely. Taking advantage of the moment that the red stone prison was forming, the black-robed old married woman and the fat middle-aged man retreated immediately. This is... Jian Wushuang frowned and looked around him. He was currently in a corridor which was formed by the red giant stones and red walls stood on both sides of him. Moreover, the red stone walls were strange as they even blocked off his soul power. Break! Jian Wushuang unleashed an unreasonable amount of strength with the intent to break the red stone walls. However, the hardness of the red stone walls had completely exceeded his expectations. A stroke with his power had only managed to leave a sword mark that was neither big nor small on the red stone walls. Moreover, the sword mark closed up again in a split second. Chapter 1554, His Highness Mu Hong on the peak of Ancient Demon Mountain, in the Black Palace. Swoosh! Swoosh! The old lady in a black robe and the chubby, middle-aged man appeared simultaneously. The old lady in a black robe looked extremely solemn while the chubby, middle-aged man looked miserable. He was covered in blood and his aura was extremely weak. What happened? His Highness Mu Hong creased his eyebrows and asked. Your Highness, the experts that barged into Blood Demon Church this time should be coming for us. They have 3 real gods fighting against the people of Blood Demon Church on the surface, but they have one chaotic real god who came here, the chubby, middle-aged man said. Chaotic real god? His Highness Mu Hong said. Master, the old lady in a black robe looked at Lord Lang and said politely, there are 2 of them who barged into my formation. One of them is a chaotic real god while another, if I'm not mistaken, should be the top genius from lineage of Star who is extremely famous, Jian Wushuang. Lord Lang, who had been sitting down at ease, her body suddenly quivered when she heard Jian Wushuang's name. There was a glimpse of an unnoticeable expression in her eyes. Jian Wushuang? The 3rd place on Universe God ranking list? His Highness Mu Hong's face grew cold. Yes, it's him. Jian Wushuang is really monstrous. He is only a universe god, but even I had to put in some effort to deal with him. I can't do anything about him. His strength might already be able to compared favorably to a peak void real god's. The lady in a black robe nodded. Humph. How monstrous. If it wasn't because I happened to break through and became a real god at the time, when Wu Bei's cave came to the world, I couldn't have entered Wu Bei's cave. Otherwise, why would the white blaze fruits and white blaze fruit trees fall into his hands? His Highness Mu Hong sneered. The old lady in a black robe heard him and only smiled in silence but didn't say much. Number 7. What's the situation like? Lord Leng asked. Master, I trapped both the chaotic real god and Jian Wushuang using redstone prison temporarily. However, the chaotic real god is too strong. I'm afraid he will break my redstone prison forcefully in no time. The old lady in a black robe looked solemn. Redstone prison was her strongest trump card. Under normal circumstances, it should be sufficient to trap an ordinary chaotic real god. But the power of real god Long Qing, who was trapped in redstone prison then, definitely wasn't an ordinary chaotic real god. Master, before redstone prison breaks open from the chaotic real god, we'd better leave first. The old lady in a black robe said, Your Highness, hurry up and leave too, the chubby, middle-aged man said anxiously. He was already severely injured by the chaotic real god and he had barely any fighting power left. What's the hurry? His Highness Mu Hong said in a low voice, I've heard about Jian Wushuang for more than once. I heard that he is the top genius standing at the peak of eternal chaotic world. I wanted to fight against him long ago. Now that I have the chance, how can I miss it? But the chubby, middle-aged man wanted to say something. Shut up, His Highness Mu Hong reprimanded him. Then he looked at Lord Leng with a faint smile. Leng, wait for me here for a while. I'll be right back. Lord Leng nodded faintly. His Highness Mu Hong left the palace with the chubby, middle-aged man number 7. Lord Leng commanded, You follow them. Remember, you only have to deal with the chaotic real god. As for Jian Wushuang, let His Highness Mu Hong deal with him on his own. Yes, the old lady in a black robe nodded, then she disappeared in the palace again. In the Black Palace, there's only Lord Leng sitting alone in silence. On Lord Leng's face, which was covered with a veil, there was a malicious smile. She rubbed her stomach involuntarily with her delicate hand. There was a consciousness in deep sleep. She had sealed off the consciousness long ago with all the tricks she had on hand. Sister, your sweetheart is so stubborn. He really chased after you from Green Fire World to Eternal Chaotic World. In merely 10,000 years, he became so famous. He's really outstanding. No wonder you're so into him. It's a pity that his heart is with you. Otherwise, your younger sister, me, would be quite attracted to him. Lord Leng muttered to herself. Her voice was so ghostly and creepy. Jian Wushuang, as you're here, let me take a good look at your capability. He. In the huge red stone prison that covered the vast universe, Jian Wushuang and real god Long Qing were trapped in the prison. They couldn't break it apart in a short period of time. Then, His Highness Mu Hong, the chubby, middle-aged man and the old lady in a black robe appeared in a corner of the red stone prison. Your Highness Mu Hong, Jian Wushuang is at the end of this passageway. Just walk along the passageway ahead and you'll see him. I'll have to deal with a chaotic real god, so I'll not keep you company. The old lady in a black robe bowed and then plunged in the direction of real god Long Qing and the passageway in red stone prison. His Highness Mu Hong stood side by side with the chubby, middle-aged man. Your Highness, I fought with a chaotic real god earlier and got severely injured. Not even 10% of my power has recovered yet and Jian Wushuang isn't weak. What if? The chubby, middle-aged man had yet to finish what he wanted to say. What do you mean by what if? Your Highness Mu Hong glared at the chubby, middle-aged man. Leng is waiting outside as she watches. You want to embarrass me before her? The chubby, middle-aged man's face changed, but he never spoke again. Humph, he's just a universe god. Even if he is a genius, just how strong he can be. His Highness Mu Hong had a scornful look. He was pampered since birth and he had his father as his backer. He had always been riding roughshod over everything and never bothered with anyone, including those geniuses in Eternal Chaotic World. The most important thing was that he was extremely confident in his power. One should know that he had already broken through and become real god, and he had already comprehended one of the 9 heaven god doctrines, darkness doctrine. Although his comprehension towards darkness doctrine wasn't high and wasn't at the standard of passing the first level of Doctrine Palace, he possessed extremely aggressive real God armor and divine weapons because of his father. On top of that, he had cultivated some secret skills and his fighting power had already reached the peak of a void real God. With such a fighting power, from his point of view, no matter how amazing a universe God was, he would be able to win against him. Don't be in a hurry to fight with him directly. Let my 2 war puppets play with him first. His Highness Mu Hong smirked coldly. He waved and 2 tall figures appeared before him. They were 2 war puppets of void god level. Under the guidance of His Highness Mu Hong, the 2 war puppets plunged ahead in the passageway. Chapter 1555. A great change at one of the passages within the red stone prison. Jian Wushuang had an icy-cold expression. As he held the Blood Mountain sword on his right hand, he walked forward slowly and his eyes remained vigilant regarding his surroundings at all times. He had already attempted to break open the red stone prison moments ago. However, he discovered that he did not have the ability to do so as he could not even break open the stone wall which was beside him. Without any choice, he could only follow the passage in front of him and continue walking slowly. Although this prison is sturdy, it was still created by an eternal real God. With real God Long Qing's abilities, he should be able to break out in a short while, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. At that moment, at the front of the passage, 2 big shadows appeared in front of him. Battle puppets? Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. Void real God-level battle puppets. The 2 battle puppets were each holding a saber on their hands. Their icy-cold, unfeeling eyes had also locked onto Jian Wushuang firmly. In the next moment, the 2 big shadows moved at the same time. Boom! Boom! 2 frightening power burst forth abruptly. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold and he unleashed his martial art motion instantly. Back then, when he was traveling in Wu Bei's cave, his martial art motion had been recognized as the #1 among the universe gods. Moreover, at that time, his comprehension of the space-time doctrine was only at the beginner's level. After leaving Wu Bei's cave, a total of 1,800 years had passed. During the 1,800 years, with the help of the Real God Hall, his comprehension of the space-time doctrine had improved greatly. At that very moment, it had also achieved the standard necessary to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. Moreover, the secret skill Flowing Light Phantom was also controlled by the power of space-time. The higher the comprehension of space-time doctrine, the more frightening his martial art motion was. At that very moment, when Jian Wushuang had unleashed his martial art motion again, it was a lot stronger than back then when he had unleashed it in Wu Bei's cave. Swish! Swish! Among the 18 shadows, when the 2 of them were near the 2 battle puppets, both of them did an action mimicking a sword swing. The 2 battle puppets also took out their sabers instantly and swung them with their great power. At once, the swings became shrill saber light which struck Jian Wushuang's body. However, it was obvious that what they had struck was merely a phantom. As for Jian Wushuang, his real body unleashed a random stroke which was like an arc of light and he struck the necks of the 2 battle puppets easily. 2 heads were then sent flying immediately. Without their heads, the 2 battle puppets collapsed at once. Clap! Clap! Clapping sounds could be heard. When Jian Wushuang raised his head to take a look, he saw that His Highness Mu Song and the fat middle-aged were walking toward him slowly. As expected of the top genius who is able to rank 3rd on the Universe God ranking list. These 2 demon god puppets of mine actually possessed the fighting capabilities of void real gods. However, they were destroyed by you instantly, His Highness Mu Song giggled. However, he was still a bit amazed. Oh! Jian Wushuang stared at the 2 of them, especially the fat middle-aged man. His expression could not help but change, but he heaved a sigh of relief after that. It's still all right. This eternal real God has been seriously injured by real God Long Qing just now. Hence, he should not be able to unleash much of his fighting capabilities. Jian Wushuang was still extremely fearful of the eternal real gods. As for His Highness Mu Song, Jian Wushuang could tell that he was only at the level of a void god. Hence, he was not too afraid. Jian Wushuang, today, I really wish to see exactly how strong a top genius like you who is on the Universe God ranking list is. His Highness Mu Song laughed coldly. Without saying many unnecessary words, a green sickle appeared in his hands. The edge of the green sickle was extremely small but sharp. Under the illumination of the red stones around the area, the green sickle emitted an icy-cold dark red luster. Jian Wushuang held the Blood Mountain sword in his hands tightly. "Ha ha, let's fight." His Highness Mu Song laughed coldly, and with a movement of his feet, the green sickle changed into a green glittering light and proceeded to attack with lightning speed. Whoosh! 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 Many green saber lights seemed to descend at the same time, and they shrouded Jian Wushuang instantly. Jian Wushuang released the divine power in his hands and also activated the secret skill of the Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor completely. After that, the Blood Mountain sword attacked straight away. Clang! Even though it was only the first clash, Jian Wushuang's expression changed. What strength! He has probably achieved the peak of a void real god. There were both strong and weak void real gods. The weak ones were the very normal void real gods, and normally, the top 30 of the Universe God ranking list could compete with them. As for the top 10 on the Universe God ranking list, they could kill the void real gods. However, there were also void real gods who had comprehended a small bit of the power of Heaven Wei. With that, their abilities were no longer normal. As for the top of the void real gods, normally, their comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei would allow them to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. One such example was the Fiery King, who was a peak void real god. However, for His Highness Mu Song, who was in front of him, although his comprehension of the power of Heaven Wei was not very high, due to some secret skills as well as the treasures that he possessed, he could also unleash the fighting capabilities of a peak void real god. Ha ha! Jian Wushuang, why have you been on the defensive ever since we started fighting? Come on, show me your moves. Or could it be that you have been pushed back by me so much that you are unable to counterattack? His Highness Mu Song laughed loudly and swung the green sickle in his hands continuously. Every swing held a great amount of power and pushed Jian Wushuang back to the point that he had to retreat continuously. However, although Jian Wushuang was retreating continuously, his eyes remained icy cold and his expression did not show any fear. Although this person possesses the fighting capabilities of a peak void real god, he does not have much experience in close quarters combat. Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted slightly. At the next moment, his body moved and he unleashed the secret skill Flowing Light Phantom as well as his unusual martial art motion at the same time. Jian Wushuang's ghost-like body avoided the saber lights that His Highness Mu Song unleashed easily, and he appeared in front of His Highness Mu Song. 10,000 shadows. Whoosh! 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 A huge number of sword shadows appeared at the same time. Under the influence of Jian Wushuang's power of space-time, every sword shadow was unbelievably fast. What? His Highness Mu Song's expression changed slightly and he swung his green sickle immediately to block. His body was also forced to retreat. Jian Wushuang stood in his position and a small bit of disdain flashed past his eyes. Seems like I have overestimated him. Although he indeed has the fighting capabilities of a peak void real god, his close quarter combat abilities are too weak. While he has the abilities, he is unable to unleash them completely. Jian Wushuang sneered, I shall stop wasting my time on him and kill him directly. Jian Wushuang glowed with murderous intent. In a split second, an enormous amount of soul power burst forth and a giant golden divine ape covered his body. His divine power and soul power had combined beautifully. With that, Jian Wushuang's abilities had achieved their peak. Next, Jian Wushuang was about to launch his attack. However, all of a sudden, an unusual change occurred. Boom! Jian Wushuang felt as if he had been struck by a streak of lightning from a clear sky. His body paused at his position and his heart was beating madly. This is... Of all times, why must it be now? No, no! Jian Wushuang roared within his mind and his expression also became unusually ugly. He had never expected this to happen. At the critical moment where he was in the red stone prison which was very close to Leng Rushua, his inverse cultivation test for the third heaven actually descended without any warning. Chapter 1556. The third inverse cultivation test is here. Inverse cultivation test. It was the biggest test that Jian Wushuang had to pass as an inverse cultivator. He had experienced 2 inverse cultivation tests previously and passed them in extreme danger. Among the two inverse cultivation tests, when the first inverse cultivation test had descended, there were signs 120 years before that had allowed him to prepare for 120 years. For the second inverse cultivation test, the signs had come 10 years before the test. He at least got to prepare for 10 years. But then, the third inverse cultivation test. There wasn't any sign, nor did it give any time for Jian Wushuang to prepare himself. It didn't even worry about what kind of situation Jian Wushuang was in and descended directly. It suddenly descended as he was fighting against His Highness Mu Hong. Why now? Why didn't even give me any time to prepare? I don't need much. One day. It'd be great even if it was only 2 hours. Jian Wushuang roared from the bottom of his heart. Lang Rushue was within a stone's throw away from him. He only needed a little bit of time and he'd be able to see Lang Rushue. He then would figure a way to suppress her. But, out of all moments, the third inverse cultivation test had descended at this critical time. However, the inverse cultivation test was different from the previous two. There weren't any clouds. From the outside, Jian Wushuang didn't see changes, but only he knew that he was in the process of going through the test. Jian Wushuang, die! His Highness Mu Hong's eyes were cold with a tinge of murderous intention. He raised the green sickle high. Wow! A huge blade light appeared, then the air burst from the pressure and became a luxurious blade river. Jian Wushuang's face dimmed as he saw the luxurious blade river flowing towards him. Blood Mountain's sword in his hand immediately became a bolt of crimson lightning and suddenly swept out. Just as the sword light swept out, Jian Wushuang's pupils contracted. My divine power is weakening? There was a loud bang and Jian Wushuang retreated from the impact. Ha ha! His Highness Mu Hong laughed as he wielded his sickle and charged towards Jian Wushuang ferociously. The blade lights swung out from his hand. He obviously wanted to crush Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang immediately wielded his sword to block with all his strength. However, during the process, Jian Wushuang could clearly feel that his divine power was constantly weakening. Not only in terms of divine power, it included his soul power, his comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine, space-time doctrine, and even sword principle that he had created, but they were also all weakening tremendously. How could it be? Jian Wushuang was shocked and angry. If he were to be at his tip-top condition, when he collaborates his divine power with soul power to give full play to his power, he could totally defeat His Highness Mu Hong easily. He could even kill him. But then, his power was deteriorating at a terrifying speed. From fighting forcefully with His Highness Mu Hong, to barely evenly matching, to being at a disadvantage, it only took an instant. Then, Jian Wushuang was almost losing. Regardless of speed or strength, he was far behind His Highness Mu Hong. Looking at His Highness wielding his sickle again and again, even though Jian Wushuang had blocked the blade light, Jian Wushuang was retreating at every collision due to the fierce impact. Crushing him. It was almost torture. The genius in the top 10 on Universe God ranking list. Your ability is just like this? Weak. Too weak. Jian Wushuang, I overestimated your power. His Highness Mu Hong was holding his green sickle with one hand as he overlooked Jian Wushuang coldly. There was disdain in his eyes. I previously wondered just how amazing a top genius in Universe God ranking list could be, but from what I see now, you're only rubbish. Your kind is not worth my attention. D. His Highness Mu Hong let out a green glow and the murderous intention suddenly surfaced from his body. Jian Wushuang's face changed. Just then, Hong! A terrifying loud roar was suddenly heard from a corner of Red Stone Prison. Then, the originally sturdy red stone prison that even Jian Wushuang at his peak could damage, started trembling. The surrounding red stone walls started cracking. In a short while, hualala, the red stone prison collapsed. Humph! Your prison is pretty impressive, but it's not enough to trap me, Long Qing. A cold harumph suddenly exploded in the universe. Then, they immediately saw a fierce divine power explode in a corner of the void and fly in all directions. The old lady in a black robe who was dealing with real God Long Qing with her all looked terrified. At the moment when real God Long Qing broke Red Stone Prison apart. Hurry up and run. The old lady in a black robe let out a low roar and her figure instantly retreated. Your Highness, let's hurry up and leave. The chubby, middle-aged man appeared before His Highness Mu Hong. But Jian Wushuang. His Highness Mu Hong glanced at Jian Wushuang. He wanted to kill Jian Wushuang before he left. Hurry up and run. Otherwise, we won't escape in time. The chubby, middle-aged man immediately grabbed His Highness Mu Hong by his hand. Then, the two of them instantly fled. Rumble. A terrifying divine power pressed from all directions, and the ruins of the collapsed red stone prison were crushed into pieces. Then, there was a figure that soared up into the sky. It was real God Long Qing, and he was raging with imposing aura. Looking at the few people fleeing hastily in the void, he wanted to chase, but he suddenly noticed Jian Wushuang's existence. Jian Wushuang, you are. Real God Long Qing looked at Jian Wushuang with his eyebrows tightly knitted. He could tell that Jian Wushuang was in very bad condition. Jian Wushuang's divine power and aura were already weakened to an extreme low, and it was constantly weakening still. Jian Wushuang felt that all his strength was vanishing. He sat on the ground with his body slightly shivering. He couldn't move an inch. But suddenly, Jian Wushuang lifted his head and roared, "Real God Long Qing, don't bother about me. Hurry up and chase after them. Remember, you must catch the lady in Ancient Demon Mountain alive. Catch her alive." Real God Long Qing creased his eyebrows and nodded heavily. Then, just as Real God Long Qing plunged out and almost stepped foot on Ancient Demon Mountain. Vroom! A boundless black fog suddenly soared up from Ancient Demon Mountain, just like a black ocean. It instantly swept across heaven and earth and covered the entire universe. Wow! 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 From the black ocean, an enormous amount of black fog formed into creepy black waves and lapped at Real God Long Qing from all directions. Although Real God Long Qing was a chaotic real god, he seemed to be in a fix from the attack of the creepy black waves. What the hell is this? Real God Long Qing's gaze turned cold, and he constantly stabbed with his spear as he let out an imposing power to break the black waves. However, the moment it broke, more black waves ravaged over. Chapter 1557. Very close, damn it. Real God Long Qing was extremely furious. With a stab of his long spear abruptly, the strong fighting capabilities of a chaotic real god burst forth, and it was as if even the heavens could be pierced. As for the vast Black Sea, 10% of it was annihilated by that stab instantly. However, it returned to normal quickly, and the great black waves continued to head toward him madly like before. Without question, the Black Sea was even more troublesome than the red stone prison had been previously. At that very moment, at the center of the Black Sea, which was also the peak of the Ancient Demon Mountain, a white-clothed woman's body appeared slowly. Her white clothes were whiter than snow, and her face was covered with a veil. She looked just like a celestial beauty from a painting, and she was walking out slowly. Even though her looks could not be seen clearly, the special coldness and elegance of her were sufficient to make everything in the world be visibly moved. As for Jian Wushuang, who was sitting on the ground, he raised his head fiercely. His sharp eyes then locked on to the white-clothed woman at once. Lang Ruxue. Even Jian Wushuang's voice was trembling. However, he still felt delighted and furious. He was delighted as he had finally found his wife after being separated for so many years. He was furious as his wife's body was being controlled by Lang Ruxue at that very moment. As Jian Wushuang stared at the white-clothed woman, the white-clothed woman was also examining him closely. Jian Wushuang, long time no see, the white-clothed woman Lang Xianxia's voice could be heard. After so many years, you still didn't give up. You are really persistent. I have said before. Even if you walk to the end of the world, I will still be able to find you, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Yes, you have found me. However, what can you do even though you have found me? Lang Xianxia sneered. Do you have the ability to suppress me? Look at your miserable state now. If not for me being worried about some agreements that I made with her back then and the fact that she might create some trouble for me in the future if I didn't keep my promise, I would actually act now and kill you straight away. The she who Lang Xianxia mentioned was naturally referring to the consciousness of Lang Ruxuang, who had been sealed by her. Upon hearing Lang Xianxia's words, Jian Wushuang was shocked, and he could not help but clench both his fists tightly. He then spoke with a low voice, I might not be able to do anything against you today. However, I will still repeat myself. Even if you walk to the end of the world, no matter how long it takes, 1,000,000 years or even 10 million years, As long as I, Jian Wushuang, am not dead, I will do my utmost best to find and suppress you. There will surely come a day where I help her to take back what belongs to her. Ha ha, is that so? Leng Zuanju laughed evilly and her eyes squinted slightly. Very good. I'll be waiting. Let's go. Leng Zuanju turned her body and left with His Highness Mu Song and the rest of the people. Damn it. As for Jian Wushuang, he raised his head and stared at the back view of Leng Zuanju closely as she left. His heart was quivering and roaring madly to release all his dissatisfaction. He had finally found Leng Rushue. Leng Rushue was just standing in front of him. She was extremely close to him. However, he could not act to suppress Leng Rushue and rescue his wife. He could only look on as Leng Rushue left. Although she was so close, she was still out of reach. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang had already neglected the fact that he was still in the midst of the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven. He also didn't know what kind of unbelievable change was occurring inside his own body. Buzz as Leng Zuanju and her people disappeared from Jian Wushuang and real God Longqing's line of vision, the Black Sea which had spread all over the universe started to dissipate slowly. Real God Longqing was finally freed from the Black Sea. His eyes were filled with seriousness as he looked in the direction that Leng Zuanju left in. Who exactly was that woman just now? At the very moment, real God Longqing felt very uneasy. Even though her realm is not high and she seems to have not even reached the level of an eternal real God, the technique that she used just now caused even me to be fearful. Moreover, what exactly is the move that she used? Although he had stayed in the Black Sea for quite a while, he was still unable to tell how the Black Sea was formed. Although it looked like a realm treasure, that was not it. It also didn't look like a secret skill that was executed by relying on her divine power. Instead, it was another special kind of power. And Leng Zuanju possessed such a power. Jian Wushuang wants me to suppress her? If it were close quarters combat, even if it were me, I couldn't guarantee that I could defeat her. Hence, it is absolutely impossible to capture her alive. Real God Longqing shook his head. After that, he turned his body and headed in the direction of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang. Real God Longqing had appeared in front of Jian Wushuang and he was about to talk to him. What is it? All of a sudden, real God Longqing became stunned. As he stared at Jian Wushuang closely, his face was filled with astonishment and disbelief. How did you become like this? Inside the Blood Demon Church. At that very moment, the Blood Demon Church was too tragic to look at. 3 real gods, of which 2 were eternal real gods, charged in and unleashed a killing spree wantonly. Although the real gods of the Blood Demon Church had given their all to repel them, they could not do anything as the gap between their abilities was too big. For example, the Blood Demon Church Master had only just become an eternal real god. As for real God Bai Ying and real God Yin Tuo, they were at a peak level when compared to the other eternal real gods. Hence, among the both of them, either one of them could suppress the Blood Demon Church Master easily. In addition, there was still the Fiery King who was a void real god who stood at the top. Therefore, he crushed the higher-ups of the Blood Demon Church directly. Even the Blood Demon Church Master escaped tragically straight away. As for the 3 void real gods in the Blood Demon Church, 2 of them were killed on the spot while the other one escaped with serious injuries. As for the universe gods who were the higher-ups of the Blood Demon Church, Fiery King and the rest of the party did not let them off either. As such, many of them were killed. In any case, the Blood Demon Church was finished. As for the universe god disciples within the church, all of them had already escaped outside the sect. In the very moment, real God Bai Ying, real God Yin Tuo and the Fiery King were heading toward the direction of the ancient demon mountain. While traveling, the 3 of them were chatting with one another as well. Ha ha. In the beginning, the Blood Demon Church Master was still quite arrogant. After knowing that we have a lineup of 2 eternal real gods and a void real god, he still bragged that he would make us stay in the Blood Demon Church forever. I really wonder where he got his courage from. At the start, I still thought that the Blood Demon Church had some sort of trump card. In the end, they had nothing but the Blood Demon Church Master boasting outrageously. However, it's a pity. In the end, we still allowed the Blood Demon Church Master to escape. The 3 of them felt that it was a pity. The Blood Demon Church Master had done all kinds of evil. Hence, when they had acted this time round, They had planned to completely eliminate the Blood Demon Church. However, in the end, they did not manage to do what they had wanted. However, in actual fact, they didn't know that the Blood Demon Churchmaster was not bragging previously. He had really wanted to get the three of them to stay forever. The basis was that His Highness Mu Song and Leng Zuanju were willing to help him. However, in the end, His Highness Mu Song and Leng Zuanju had never paid any attention to him. As such, he had escaped as he could not do anything. I wonder how Real God Long Qing and Jian Wushuang are doing. With Real God Long Qing, a chaotic real god, going there personally, there will definitely be no problem. While chatting with one another, the three of them arrived at the place where Jian Wushuang and Real God Long Qing were in the blink of an eye. Chapter 1558. Gray-haired, Jian Wushuang. Real God Long Qing. Real God Bai Ying, Real God Yin Tuo and Fiery King lowered themselves. Why are only you here? Where's Jian Wushuang? Fiery King was the first who asked. Jian Wushuang. He's there. Real God Long Qing beckoned to the ground below. The three of them then noticed the figure on the ground below. From that one glance, Real God Bai Ying, Real God Yin Tuo and Fiery King were shocked. His Jian Wushuang? Real God Bai Ying was shocked. How is it possible? From his aura, it is really him, Real God Yin Tuo exclaimed in surprise. While Fiery King's face grew dim, the three of them could see the figure on the ground below, but the figure had grey hair, a hoary look, and his body was like a withered tree. It was just like an elderly who had reached old age. On top of that, the grey-haired elderly had no fluctuation of divine power at all. He was just like a common person. A total commoner. The grey-haired common elder was one of the members widely recognized in Eternal Chaotic World, Jian Wushuang. Swoosh! Fiery King was the first to plunge down and appear before the grey-haired elderly. It was as though he had felt Fiery King's arrival. The grey-haired elderly lifted his head slightly and revealed a face that looked like Jian Wushuang's but obviously a few times older. The face was hoary and he could barely force a smile at Fiery King. Jian Wushuang, it's really you? Fiery King's eyes were wide open. Even though there was a drastic change in Jian Wushuang's appearance, the fluctuation of divine power vanished, the aura was extremely weak, the nature of the weak aura was really one that he was familiar with. Fiery King was definite that the grey-haired elderly was really Jian Wushuang. Why did you become like this? Fiery King's face grew grave and his voice was low. At the same time, he glanced at Real God Long Qing. Real God Long Qing, weren't you with Jian Wushuang the whole time? Why did you let him turn into such a condition? Fiery King was hot-tempered and Jian Wushuang did good grace to him. Looking at Jian Wushuang's condition, he didn't worry about if Real God Long Qing was a chaotic real god but reprimanded him. However, Real God Long Qing only creased his eyebrows slightly. Brother Fiery King. Jian Wushuang, who had become a grey-haired elderly, spoke. His voice was hoarse and weak. This has nothing to do with Real God Long Qing. He did his best. The reason why I became like this is due to my personal body condition. Personal body condition? Fiery King squinted his eyes. Let's forget about this. We barged into Blood Demon Church and made a huge scene. We may have already startled Real God Zhu Gong. Hence, it's best we leave here first, Jian Wushuang said. All right, Fiery King answered. Real God Long Qing, Real God Bai Ying and Real God Yin Tuo nodded heavily in agreement. Brother Fiery King, please lend me a hand. Jian Wushuang suddenly extended his hand. His hand was hoary too and his skin was so dry that it cracked. I have no divine power at all. I can't even travel. I can only ask Brother Fiery King to give me a ride. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Fiery King felt a tug at his heartstrings and his gaze at Jian Wushuang was filled with sympathy. Very soon, the five of them departed. However, Jian Wushuang was on Fiery King's back. On the way, Jian Wushuang never spoke. As for Fiery King, Real God Long Qing and the rest were in silence. No one spoke. However, not long after they had traveled from Blood Demon Church. Vroom! A ferocious power suddenly descended. Then, there was immediately a 3-meter-tall figure, a giant-like elderly in a purple robe appeared in the void from nowhere. Looking at the elderly in a purple robe, the few of them who were originally traveling forward suddenly stopped as their eyes contracted in shock. "Greetings to Mr. Zhugong from Longqing." Real God Longqing bowed slightly before the elderly in a purple robe. "It's Real God Zhugong. We're in trouble." Real God Bai Ying, Real God Yin Tuo and Fiery King were terrified. Jian Wushuang, who was on Fiery King's back, couldn't help but lift his head to steal a glance at the elderly in a purple robe. Real God Zhugong was the king of Zhugong Holy Kingdom. At the same time, Lineage of Star was fearful of him. They didn't dare to send any real gods from their sect to Zhugong Holy King. He was a superb expert on the 5th place on Real God ranking list. Although Real God Longqing was a chaotic real god, compared to Real God Zhugong, he was far behind. When they met, just like then, Real God Longqing had to refer to Real God Zhugong as Mr. Real God Longqing, the extermination of Blood Demon Church is your doing? Real God Zhugong stood there with his cold voice and asked in a calm manner, but every word he uttered hammered the few of their hearts brutally. They were all shivering in fear. Such terrifying power. Fiery King clenched his teeth and complimented. "Mr. Zhugong, yes, it is our doing," Real God Longqing replied carefully. "Humph, Blood Demon Church is one of the forces under the control of Holy Kingdom Zhugong. Before you took action against it, you didn't even inform me. Wasn't that disrespectful to me?" Real God Zhugong harumphed coldly and there was anger in his eyes. "This." Real God Longqing's face grew grave. He thought for a while and took out a Qian Kung ring. "I'm really not considerate enough regarding what happened today. There are 20 doctrine gems in this Qian Kuan ring. Consider this an apology." "Only 20? Real God Zhugong's gaze was cold. 200 doctrine gems and I'll let the few of you off. Otherwise, none of you will be leaving." 200? Real God Longqing stunned. Real God Bai Ying and Real God Yin Tuo stunned. Doctrine gem was an extremely precious treasure to real gods as it was very useful. Any ordinary eternal real god would only have 10 doctrine gems at most. 200 doctrine gems was also a huge figure to Real God Longqing, who was a chaotic real god. "Fine, I'll give them to you." Real God Longqing threw another Qian Kuan ring out directly. Although 200 doctrine gem wasn't a small amount, Real God Longqing accepted Hall Master Yuan's invitation and Hall Master Yuan offered him a higher price than that. After Real God Zhugong took the Qian Kuan ring, he glanced and nodded, "You can leave now." Fiery King and the rest let out a breath of relief and immediately prepared to leave. But then, Real God Zhugong suddenly fixed his gaze on Jian Wushuang. Who is this person that didn't even have any fluctuation of divine power? Jian Wushuang's heart skipped a beat. He knew clearly that if Real God Zhugong were to find out his real identity, he couldn't even think about leaving Holy Kingdom Zhugong alive. Fiery King immediately replied, "Mister, this is my relative. Many years ago, he got caught by Blood Demon Church and was tortured. His training was in vain entirely and he turned into a commoner. I barged into Blood Demon Church today to take revenge and to rescue him." "Is that so?" Real God Zhugong raised his eyebrows but didn't suspect. "Let's go." Fiery King and the rest quickly brought Jian Wushuang with them and left. Chapter 1559. A shocking transformation. Real God Longqing, Real God Bai Ying, Real God Yin Tuo and the Fiery King were traveling while carrying Jian Wushuang with them. After some time, they finally left the Zhugong Holy Kingdom's territory. In the Black Void. "We have finally come out." Real God Longqing and the rest of them heaved a sigh of relief. The Zhugong Holy Kingdom had Real God Zhugong. As soon as he discovered Jian Wushuang's real identity, even the few of them could not get away scot-free. That Real God Longqing is really very unreasonable. He actually asked for 200 doctrine gems. Yes. Yin Tuo, you and I are both unable to fork out 200 doctrine gems. Only Real God Longqing is able to do it. Real God Bai Ying and Real God Yin Tuo sighed. Real God Zhugong is known for being unreasonable. Real God Longqing said, "After all, the Blood Demon Church is a big powerhouse within the Holy Kingdom that he controls. Without getting a green light from him, we destroyed it directly. Moreover, it's already not too bad that he didn't kill all of us straight away. As for the 200 doctrine gems, it's nothing." After sighing for some time, Real God Longqing looked toward Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, although the mission this time around could not be completed and that you became like this as well, the three of us had done our best. I know, Jian Wushuang nodded his head slightly. Thank you, and I'm sorry for troubling the three of you. After I get back, I will explain to Hall Master Yuan clearly. As for the rewards that Hall Master Yuan have promised previously, they will definitely be given in full. Thank you very much. Real God Long Qing thanked Jian Wushuang. After that, he left with Real God Bai Ying and Real God Yin Tuo. They only came when they were hired. Since they had already finished what they were supposed to do, they would naturally leave. In the void, only the Fiery King and Jian Wushuang remained. Jian Wushuang, how did you become like this? The Fiery King could not help but ask. In the beginning, he had thought that Jian Wushuang became his current state as he had been poisoned by a potent poison. However, a great amount of time had passed since traveling from the Blood Demon Church to their current location. Even after that, Jian Wushuang still did not get any better. Hence, the Fiery King was anxious. I'm sorry, Big Brother Fiery King. This matter concerns a few secrets of mine and it is inconvenient for me to tell you. You only need to send me back to the lineage of Star. At that time, Hall Master Yuan and the rest of the people will help me to resolve this matter, Jian Wushuang said apologetically. All right, the Fiery King nodded his head and he did not mind. After all, everyone has secrets. Moreover, some secrets were extremely crazy. Hence, he would naturally not get to the bottom of Jian Wushuang's secrets. The Fiery King took out an airship from the outside world. After that, he began his journey to send Jian Wushuang back to the lineage of Star from the Zhugong Holy Kingdom. He took tens of years to return to the lineage of Star. However, even though tens of years had passed, Jian Wushuang still did not get any better. At the lineage of Star, inside a cave that was built with special gems. As Hall Master Yuan and Lei Chao looked in front of them at the white-haired Jian Wushuang who looked like an old man, their eyes squinted slightly. If not for the special life aura of Jian Wushuang, based on looks alone, they would not expect the person in front of them to actually be Jian Wushuang. Fiery King, thank you for sending Jian Wushuang back this time around. I will make sure that Jian Wushuang remembers this favor, Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang and I belong to the same lineage. Moreover, he has rescued me from the Sky Sword prison and I am extremely grateful to him for this. Hence, I ought to send him back and there's nothing with regards to owing or returning favors. Now, the most important thing is his current state. I hope that your lineage of Star is able to think of a way to get him to recover quickly, the Fiery King said. Don't worry. You can leave this matter to the lineage of Star, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood. The Fiery King nodded his head, took a look at Jian Wushuang seriously and left soon after. Inside the cave, only Hall Master Yuan, Lei Chao and Jian Wushuang were left. Jian Wushuang, for you to be in this state, could it be? Hall Master Yuan frowned and stared at Jian Wushuang. The inverse cultivation test for the third heaven. Jian Wushuang raised his head and said, I was right. Hall Master Yuan and Lei Chao looked at each other. They knew that since Jian Wushuang's current state was not caused by other people, the only other possibility was the inverse cultivation test. What's wrong with your inverse cultivation test this time around? Hall Master Yuan questioned. I'm not sure either. Jian Wushuang shook his head. Previously, after I came out of Wu Bei's cave, my abilities were already very close to their peak. Under normal circumstances, when my abilities reach such a level, the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven should have descended. Hence, I intentionally stayed within the lineage of Star to wait for the arrival of the inverse cultivation test. After waiting for a total of 1,800 years, which caused my abilities in every area to reach its peak, the inverse cultivation test did not show any signs of descending at all. However, this time around, after I received the news from the Vientiane Tower, I set off to the Zhugong Holy Kingdom to capture Lang Zuanju alive. At the start, it was still quite smooth. However, at the most critical moment where I was in an intense battle with someone, the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven descended without any warning. It descended abruptly. Hall Master Yuan was stunned. There were actually no warnings at all. Lei Chao was also shocked. For the God's test of a normal universe God, there would be some warnings given when it was about to descend so that the universe God could catch the warning and know when the God's test would descend clearly. This would then allow them to have sufficient time to make preparations. This was what had happened to many cultivators. As for inverse cultivators, although they were different from the rest, during the previous 2 inverse cultivation tests, they had also given Jian Wushuang ample time to prepare. However, this time, which was the 3rd time, there were no warnings. Hence, there was no time to make any preparations. Back then, I was stunned as well. After all, I was in a close quarters fight with a void real god. As soon as the inverse cultivation test descended, my divine power started to weaken speedily. Jian Wushuang's old face turned grave. It's not only my divine power. Even my soul power, my comprehension toward the heaven way, as well as all the secret skills that I learnt, all began to weaken. Now, not even the slightest bit of my divine power and soul power remain. This is the same for my comprehension toward the heaven way. Hence, it can be said that the current me has been reduced to a normal person. During the journey back here, I tried to gather my divine power and also comprehend the heaven way. However, there was no effect at all. Furthermore, this inverse cultivation test has also caused my body to change. My body has become like a normal person's and my hair has turned white naturally. With that, I became lifeless, which is my current state now. I also had an impression that I would live every day with no thought of tomorrow. Live every day with no thought of tomorrow? Hall Master Yuan and Lei Chao became stupefied. Jian Wushuang was originally an extremely powerful and an exceptional genius who could compete against a peak void real god. However, in the blink of an eye, he had been reduced to a normal old man who had no power at all and could only live day to day with no thought of tomorrow. This was the inverse cultivation test of the 3rd heaven. Chapter 1560. Senior Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, have you already passed inverse cultivation test, or are you still in the process of the test? Hall Master Yuan creased his eyebrows as he asked. Should be still in the process of the test, Jian Wushuang replied, and I can feel that my 3rd inverse cultivation test will be much longer than the 2 previous inverse cultivation test. In other words, my current state will remain for quite some time. How much longer? Hall Master Yuan asked. I don't know. Jian Wushuang shook his head. He knew that he was passing through the test and the test would take very long, but he couldn't determine just how long exactly it would last for. Such a strange test. I have never heard about it before. This is troublesome, Hall Master Yuan said in a deep voice. Really troublesome. Even with Jian Wushuang's mental state, he could feel a faint helplessness. One should know that ever since he started cultivation, he had only relied on his own power. With his power, he was confident. Even if he were to run into strong enemies, he would figure out a way to grow in an unfavorable environment. But then, his power was non-existent. Regardless, as your inverse cultivation test has descended, everything that is meant to happen is going to happen. Plus, I can only rely on myself to go through this inverse cultivation test. No one else can help me with it. I will endure everything on my own. Very soon, Jian Wushuang had left the cave dwelling and walked towards his sword star. As for Hall Master Yuan and Lei Chao, they went to search for ancient books to see if they could find any solution. In Lineage of Star, among the rolling palaces, Jian Wushuang, who was hoary looking with grey hair, was slowly walking forward. His footsteps were very slow. After all, not only did he become a commoner, he became a grey-haired elderly. He didn't possess any power. To him, every step that he took was difficult too. On the way, he naturally ran into many disciples of Lineage of Star. When the disciples of Lineage of Star saw Jian Wushuang, they were shocked. Who is this person? Who would he carry the token of Disciples of Star Palace on him? Disciples of Star Palace? Impossible. I've never seen him. Plus, this person didn't seem to have any fluctuations of divine power. Commoner. Really? At first, the disciples didn't even recognize Jian Wushuang but were only suspicious about why Jian Wushuang was carrying the token of Disciples of Star Palace. But, very soon, this person, he looks like Senior Wushuang. What nonsense are you talking about? Senior Wushuang is such an amazing genius. How could he be related to this old man that doesn't even have any fluctuations of divine power? But his life aura is exactly the same as Senior Wushuang's. I've seen Senior Wushuang before, That's why I'm familiar with Senior Wushuang's life aura. It's really Senior Wushuang's life aura? A person's facial features and body could change, but his life aura would never change. The disciples saw Jian Wushuang but couldn't recognize him. Whoever had seen him before could recognize his life aura though. Senior Wushuang, how come he changed like that? This is clearly an old man who is dying. How could it be the Senior Wushuang I adore? I don't believe this, I won't believe this. Impossible. Senior Wushuang is so amazing. It's impossible that he would change like this. Many disciples roared angrily and were not willing to believe what they saw. They followed Jian Wushuang. When they saw Jian Wushuang walk towards Sword Star and Qiu Yu, who was the leader among the maidservants in Sword Star, escort and help him personally to get into Sword Star, the disciples of Lineage of Star finally believed it. The old man who looked like he was going to die at any time was Jian Wushuang. On that day itself, Hall Master Yuan announced personally that when Jian Wushuang was wandering outside, someone had plotted against him and he had gotten poisoned. Hence, he had lost all his power and he couldn't recover in a short period of time. The moment the announcement was made, the entire Lineage of Star shook and everyone was bubbling over. On Sword Star, Jian Wushuang sat down on a chair slowly. Qiu Yu and the other maidservants stood there politely and they obviously looked concerned. Especially Qiu Yu. Mister, what has happened to you? Qiu Yu asked anxiously. Don't worry, I'm okay. I'll recover in no time. As for the rumors outside, don't worry about it, Jian Wushuang said. Although Jian Wushuang said so, Qiu Yu was still very worried. Jian Wushuang didn't say much but came to the secret room where he cultivated in seclusion on Sword Start. He sat down in the secret room, but his face looked solemn. Although he had behaved at ease before Hall Master Yuan, Qiu Yu, and the others, in actual fact, he was even more worried than anyone else. I cultivated over the years, went through so much training, fought life and death battles, in exchange for my power. It vanished just like that. And, of all times, it happens to be when I got to see Leng Ruxue and when I desired power the most. It just suddenly descended. This inverse cultivation test, what is going on? Jian Wushuang roared in the bottom of his head and his hoary face grew red. Jian Wushuang, don't get too emotional. You must steady your mind. King of Venomous Worm's voice suddenly rang in Jian Wushuang's head. Don't forget about real God Wu Bei in Wu Bei's cave. Ha! Jian Wushuang looked surprised. Real God Wu Bei? Back when Jian Wushuang had asked real God Wu Bei about the third inverse cultivation test, real God Wu Bei had never said clearly, but he did mention that his drastic change of disposition was due to his experience of his third inverse cultivation test. The other almighties referred to him as a madman. The third inverse cultivation test that real God Wu Bei had experienced should be the same as the one he was in. Real God Wu Bei could become an inverse cultivator of real God level and his power could be compared favorably with an almighty's. He naturally was an impressive figure. However, even he had a drastic change in disposition after he passed through the third inverse cultivation test while you are in the midst of the test. If you were to act recklessly, you might turn out like real God Wu Bei. Plus, this is a really decent situation. Don't forget, the third inverse cultivation is your biggest test. This test is definitely much more strict than the others. King of Venomous Worms roared. Jian Wushuang felt his chest tighten. He kept quiet for a while and finally let out a breath of relief. I misbehaved. Jian Wushuang calmed down. Anyone who experiences what you're encountering would misbehave, or even go mad. It's normal. But you have to steady your mind. Don't get flustered. Otherwise, you might be doomed forever, King of Venomous Worms exhorted. I know, Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. He understood it well. Oh yeah, King of Venomous Worms, since I became like this, what effect does it have on you as my parasitic beast?